Hello everyone, this is your friend Garlic, and once again, welcome back home to Rivervale. Now today we're gonna take a look at 5 martial feats to level up your D&D game. Now before going into the new feats, we're gonna see what already exists in the game. So we know that heavy weapons have support from the Great Weapon Master feat. It gives you an extra bonus to your damage, and in 5.5 it can be used with heavy ranged weapons as well, like the longbow or the heavy crossbow. Finesse weapons have the support from the defensive duelist feat, which gives you a bonus to your AC using your reaction. Light weapons, of course, have access to the dual wielder feat, which allows you to make an extra attack in certain occasions. Ranged weapons have access to the sharpshooter feat, which does not give us any damage bonuses, but it does give us better accuracy in that it allows us to ignore cover. Crossbows have access to the crossbow expert feat, which can potentially increase our damage, but it also primarily makes crossbows usable with extra attack. Shields have the shield master feat, which allows us to, it gives us some defensive bonuses, but also allows us to knock somebody prone or push them. And grappling has the grappler feat. What we can see from this list is that there is something missing. There is a type of weapon that does not have any support as of right now, and that is versatile weapons. I'm talking about your longswords, battle axes, warhammers, and war picks, which are not heavy weapons, they're not finesse weapons, and they're not light weapons. So they right now they do not get support from any of the pre-existing feats. So with that, we're getting into our first feat for the day, which is Versatile Master. It's a general feat, which means that it requires you to be at least level 4, but all feats from this list are general feats, and it requires you to have a strength or dexterity of 13 or higher. It of course gives you an ability score increase like all general feats. It allows you to increase your strength or dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. Now let's get into the real benefits of this feat. The first one is called Versatile Combatant. It says that you can treat weapons that have the versatile property as finesse weapons, which means that yes, you can attack with your dexterity instead of your strength, even when using your longsword with 2 hands. Now you might think that okay, that kind of makes sense for the longsword, but what about, a warhammer? Isn't a warhammer really heavy? Well, I know that warhammers are generally depicted as very heavy in fantasy, but real historical warhammers were actually quite light. Sure, they are more forward heavy than swords, they have a higher point of balance, but they were surprisingly agile. And so this actually makes sense for normal-sized warhammers and war picks and battle axes as well, if we look at how these weapons were actually used historically. Also, as part of Versatile Combatant, if you have access to them, you can use either the dueling or the great weapon fighting style, regardless of whether you're holding the weapon with 1 or 2 hands. So basically, yes, if you have access to either the dueling or the great weapons fighting style, you can use either of those styles when attacking with a versatile weapon. Of course, you can only use one of the 2 fighting styles, you cannot use both of them at the same time, but this will give us a lot of extra versatility. We can switch between using 1 or 2 hands, regardless of what fighting style we might have. The last 2 benefits, I'm going to show them to you together because they are excluding each other. The first one is called one-handed fencing. It says that when you're holding a versatile weapon with 1 hand and your other hand is free, you get a +2 bonus to your AC. However, if you make an attack using both hands, you lose that bonus to your AC until the start of your next turn. So as long as you do not attack with both hands, and you're only attacking using a D8 damage die, you basically have the same bonus to your AC that you would have if you were to be using a shield. So you can use versatile weapons defensively this way. Now, the offensive counterpart of this is two-handed structure. It says that when you make an attack with a versatile weapon that you're holding with 2 hands as part of the attack action, you can add half your proficiency bonus rounded up to the damage roll. So this is basically a lesser damage boost than Great Weapon Master, but it's supposed to support the versatility aspect of the feat and of the weapon that you're using. You can at any point switch between using 1 or 2 hands, and basically this paragraph right here, that if you make an attack using both hands, you lose the bonus to your AC, means that on every round you will only get to use either one-handed fencing or two-handed structure. So you can choose to take an offensive or a defensive stance on every one of your turns. This way we can have a lot more options when using versatile weapons, and we can use them on a lot more characters. Now, if you want to deal some extra damage, you don't necessarily have to go for a heavy weapon. You can still do some extra damage with a versatile weapon, but you will have the option to use that weapon defensively. Moving on to our next feat for the day, we get to Weapon Duelist. And the purpose of this feat is to support the idea of using dual wielding defensively, which is how it was primarily used in history. The classic rapier and dagger fighting style means that you're using your offhand weapon primarily as a tool to parry enemy attacks, and then when you do successfully parry with your offhand weapon, you use your main weapon to do a riposte. That is how dual wielding was primarily used historically, but in fantasy, dual wielding is used mainly as an offensive fighting style, so I felt that there was not enough support to use two weapons defensively, and this is what this feat does. It requires us to have a strength or dexterity of 13 or higher, and it increases our strength or dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. The first thing that we get is offhand parry. It looks a lot like the similar benefit from the Versatile Master feat. It says that when you're holding a weapon in each hand and your offhand weapon is light, you don't have to be wielding two light weapons to do this, you have a +2 bonus to your AC. However, if you make an extra attack as a result of using a weapon that has the light property, you lose that bonus to your AC until the start of your next turn. What this means is that as long as you do not do a dual wielding attack, you can have a +2 bonus to your AC. If you do try to attack with your offhand weapon, then you lose that bonus. The second part of this feat is Rapid Riposte. It says that while the previous effect of this feat is active, while your offhand parry is active, if a creature misses you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to make a melee attack with your main weapon against the attacker. And this really brings the whole feat together, and the whole idea of doing a parry with your maybe dagger in your offhand, and then doing a main weapon attack with whatever weapon you'll be using in your main hand. And unless you want to be super versatile and use this in conjunction with dual wielding, your main weapon does not have to be light, right? You can just have a normal weapon. You can have a rapier, for example, in your main hand, and then use something else, using a light weapon only in your offhand. Now, of course, if you do opt to use two light weapons, then you have the option of either using this feat to get some defensive benefits, or go for dual wielding if the situation calls for it. Moving on to our third feat for the day, this is the Shield Defender feat. It requires us to have a strength of 13 or higher, and it increases our strength score by 1 to a maximum of 20. The first thing it gives us is the shield protection benefit. It says that when having a shield equipped, adjacent allies have half cover. So this does not give any extra defense to us, but it does give half cover, which is basically a +2 to AC and dexterity saving throws to our adjacent allies, because we are protecting them with our shield. It also gives us Shield Wall, which says that when two or more characters with this feat are adjacent to each other, while having a shield equipped, of course, they all have 3/4 cover. So basically, you can create a shield wall with your allies to have superior defense, as long as you're standing right next to each other. The last thing is Reactive Bash. It says that when an enemy misses you with a melee attack while you have a shield equipped, you can use your reaction to force the target to make a strength saving throw, and if they fail, you can either push them 5 feet from you or cause them to have the prone condition. So this is basically the exact same thing as the Shield Master feat gives us with the Shield Bash, but that is used offensively on your turn. Well, this is a reactive version of that. And of course, you can use both of them, right? If you have both of these feats, you can try to bash someone on your turn, and again as a reaction if they miss you. Moving on to our fourth feat for the day, this is the Firearms Expert feat. Now, firearms, I'm talking about the pistol and the musket, have been included in the core 5.5 player's handbook. They are basically a more offensive version of crossbows. They have a higher damage die, but they have lower range, and they still have the loading property. But the thing is that unlike crossbows, they do not have any support from feats as of right now. Crossbows have the loading property, which means that they cannot be used effectively with extra attack, but the Crossbow Expert feat will allow you to do that. Now, I think we really need a feat for campaigns where firearms are allowed that makes them usable with extra attack, and this is what this feat is here to do. It requires you to have a dexterity of 13 or higher, and it increases our dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. The first thing we get is ignore loading, which is exactly the same as with the crossbow expert feat, but for firearms. It says that you ignore the loading property of the pistol and musket, all called firearms elsewhere in this feat. If you're holding one of them, you can load a piece of ammunition into it, even if you lack a free hand. Again, exactly the same as with crossbow expert, but it works for firearms. The next thing we get is headshot. It says that when you score a critical hit with a firearm, you can roll one additional damage die when determining the extra damage the target takes. So on a crit, instead of doing 2d, for example with a pistol, instead of doing 2d10 plus your dexterity modifier, you're going to do 3d10 plus dex modifier with this feat. The last benefit is called ricochet. It says when you miss with an attack with a firearm on your turn, you can use a bonus action to repeat the attack against a different creature. If the new attack hits, you don't add your dexterity modifier to the damage roll unless that modifier is negative. So the idea is you miss with the firearm, but the bullet ricochets and hits somebody else. But because you're not aiming directly at them, you don't add your dexterity modifier to the damage. Because you're not really getting them at one of their vital organs or really doing a solid hit. They're just getting scraped from the bullet. And so yeah, I think in campaigns where firearms are commonly used, this feat is absolutely necessary to make them usable. Now, the final feat for the day is called Unarmed Expert, and this feat is here to support unarmed attackers, primarily monks, but there might be other classes or subclasses that allow for unarmed fighting as well. It's of course a general feat. It increases your strength or dexterity by 1. And the first benefit we get is light hand. It says that your hands are now considered light weapons, which means, of course, that you can do an offhand attack with using your punches, your hands, right? If you attack with your main hand, you can make 1 attack per turn using your offhand. Of course, you would not be adding your dexterity modifier to your offhand attack unless you have a fighting style, but, that's for you to figure out how to get. The second part is my body is the weapon. It says that your unarmed strikes acquire mastery properties. You can access those properties even if you don't have the weapon mastery feature. Your hands acquire the nick property, and your legs acquire the topple property. As long as you're not wielding any other weapons or a shield, you are considered to have both your hands and legs equipped. And so basically, yes, now your hands have the nick property, so you don't even have to use a bonus action to do the offhand attack. And if, for example, you're a level 5 monk and you have extra attack, you can use one of those attacks to make a punch, then take advantage of the nick of the light weapon property and the nick mastery property to do an offhand attack as well, and then use your legs for a kick for your second attack and take advantage of the topple property, or do them the other way around to get advantage. You know what you're doing. The last part is grappling defense. It says you have advantage on rolls to avoid or end the grappled condition on yourself, because I think being able to get out of a grapple is something that's really important for a martial artist, and so I really wanted to include this in the feat. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoy using these feats in your games. Thank you very much for being with me until the end. You can find, as always, all this information on my website, portal2rivervale.com. I'd love to see you there. And also, there is a PDF for purchase if you want to support the channel on DriveThruRPG. There's going to be a link at the description of this video, and it's going to have 8 martial feats for your game, which is the 5 that we've already seen, plus 3 more. You can leave a like if you like this video and subscribe if you want to see more, and I'd love to hear your opinion on these feats in the comment section down below. Thank you very much. Have a great day.